Hello, I am Stephen Mallon, and welcome back to Refractions. I am so happy that we have the amazing artist Cig Harvey joining us today. So, hello, Cig.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really awesome. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about your background. What got you started? What's your background with photography?
Well, like you, long time. I've spent my life dedicated to this medium, and that feels like an extraordinary way to spend a life. I think I would start there. I worked in a darkroom when I was 13. I made a lot of tea for people. So I think I first fell in love with the alchemy of the darkroom and, to make something out of nothing. I mean, I think if you've ever spent time in the darkroom to see that image, that latent image come up in the tray, listening to music, like the red light. I mean, there's something really, really seductive and beautiful about the dark room, but also sort of making something. I think that's what I first fell in love with. Almost the image making was secondary to that dark room experience. Did you spend time in the dark room?
I did. I
Yeah.
did. Really early on. I mean, my first like photo class was I was 17 and in a color darkroom at a community art center in North Carolina. So I've got a lot of fond memories of color and smell.
Yes, I mean, particularly the black and white darkroom. When I used to print my own work too, my color work, my color work. And that was less fun because it had to be done in the pitch black and it was really toxic chemistry. But the black and white darkroom, that revolving door, I mean, what's not to love, right? And just spending hours in there. I love the smell of all the stop bath and all the chemistry. I don't know, I just loved it. And so that was for my first, probably, through my teenage years. And I was really interested in pursuing a life as a photojournalist. I was really interested in using the camera as an entry point into people's lives, which I still am. And then, I traveled. I went to Bolivia on my own. I think I was 17, photographed the salt mines there. And then, traveled, lived in Spain for a couple of years, lived in Bermuda. I used to run I would run the studio of a platinum printer. But it was really when I came to Maine at my age of 26, just 2 miles from where I live now. It's a rainy, poury day in Maine, perfect for doing this. It was sort of when I came here that I really found my voice, I think, visually.
And was there a catalyst like, getting you up onto the national stage with your work?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, for me, it's just like, okay, what can I make today? Moving one step forward. I've always just, celebrated, I can make this today. And so, I think it's not about there's any sort of one thing, although there are definitely moments in my career that I've seen that, oh, I've had that moment like, this is important. And I actually had one a couple of weeks ago at Photographiska. That was a dream of mine to be to be an artist showing there. And so I always take the time, whether it's a big thing or a small thing, a book published or a cover, or, to take a minute and realize just how grateful, how lucky I am that, I get to live this life. I mean, I know you feel the same. You make images, make video, and you get to talk about photo books and work and creative lives, and all of that is just it's really, it's a lucky experience, I think.
You mentioned the U Museum. You've got a solo show at Photographica in New York right now, right?
Actually, that's a group show. I'm one of 13 or 14 artists.
Okay.
It's a show called Human Nature, and it's about the what is connected of we all use nature in a different way, either to show um, to what needs to be celebrated, what needs to be protected, what needs to be changed. And then I have a solo show up at Robert Mann right now in New York. So that's I'm twofold, which is really
Right.
wonderful.
I love Photographica's exhibition space. I think it's a wonderful way that they present the work and everything. I think it's such a great experience. Like how does it feel when you walk in and it's your work on the
I mean, it
wall?
was a total pinch me moment. I don't know if some of the people listening, if you've ever been to one of the Fotografiska, there's original one is in Stockholm, I believe. There's Tallinn, Estonia, where this show is going next. um, Berlin, Shanghai, obviously New York. And it's like they reinvented the museum somehow, you know, that you can wander around with a glass of wine of an evening. There's a DJ playing. I mean, they really, the way they sort of transform the space, it's so immersive and so sensory. And so that for me, my work is so much about the senses and what it is to feel. So to walk into a space where every part of it is curated to make you feel more, you know, there's no white walls, the lighting is such that, you know, you feel like you're having an experience that's curated in many ways. Do you agree?
I do. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I didn't even think about the fact that it's not the white wall
Right.
experience of going to those museums. It's like it is darkly lit. It is much more intimate. Like the artwork is beautifully lit, but it is very like spot driven, you
Yeah.
know, only about the work. It is not about illuminating the entire space, which I guess, you know, creates this sense of intimacy in a way where you're alone
With the
more and
work.
not aware of everyone else that's around you experiencing it at the same time.
Exactly. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
really, and then also the way they transform the elevators, the hallways. I mean, the whole thing is sort of you walk in and you are being taken through this visual and sensual experience. It's not just the visual, which is, you know, so it feels really uh you know, extraordinary to be in there. It really suits my work. Yeah, very proud for sure.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about your work. There's a narrative that I see in the photographs. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I'm a fan of the work. Just bravo. It's really wonderfully executed. The narrative, the color, everything that you do, you know, down to the printing and the scale. Um, when you're approaching your images, are these narratives that you're creating, or are these things that you're coming upon?
Okay, so I work in two different ways and then bring them all together. So I always have I always have a small camera with me. So if I'm going to pick up my daughter from school or I'm, you know, going to drive to the next town, I always have a camera with me. So it can never be that I didn't have a camera, and more than my phone, even though I'm not against people using their phones, it's whatever camera you have with you. So I always have a small one in my bag so that if I see something, I can respond to the world. And I use that for two different ways. Almost in many ways, they're like those pictures. Sometimes they're the one, and there's only one of them, and that's the one, and it makes into a book or an exhibition. And other times, those pictures become almost a sketch that I can then bring back to the studio where I am right now and say, well, what is it I'm noticing? What stopped me in my tracks today? What did I think was beautiful? Was it a certain color? Was it a look someone gave me? Was it the light moving over, you know, the ocean? So I live in a rural, you know, part of mid-coast Maine, and for me, where I live is really important to my work, to live with eyes wide open every day, to think of a possibility, because what I'm trying to do is sort of elevate the ordinary. I love Photoshop work, but my work isn't about that. Like, I want to see the light as it actually is. I want to be out in the world and experience that. So there's that side of my work. And then there's the other side of my work where I bring that back and I think, well, what is it I'm concerned with here? What is the story I'm trying to tell? And I let the pictures tell me that. And then I might use that information or that knowledge as a way to then say, well, what else could I make that is in line with that or would speak to that through metaphor and symbol? So those pictures are more constructed. I don't want them to feel constructed because then they become perhaps a little more, I don't know, soulless in a way. But, you know, so it's these two ways. Sometimes they're found, sometimes they're made.
And I think you just summarized what one of the things that I'm really drawn to is that I can't tell in some of the photographs, you know, like if this was something you just stumbled upon, or like was this a reconstructed memory or dream or something. And I think it's not an easy thing to do. So
Well,
bravo.
thank you. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, and sometimes to greater and lesser, you know, degrees of success. But that's what I'm always sort of trying to find is that, you know, I want to make a body of work that almost is, or a photograph that is the same, the elicits the same response in the viewer as I had when I saw it or when I first made it. You know, when I turned the corner and the light was hitting, you know, that tree, there was a gasp moment. And so then I try and sort of reenact that to have, using the print statement, using all the different things we have at our fingertips, how can I create that same feeling in the viewer when they walk in the gallery?
How
Yeah.
long do you think you normally spend on the images?
What do you mean? Do you mean in terms of like actually making the images or like printing them?
All of the above. Like, let's say, yeah, from concept to like, the prints coming out, like how much time would you usually commit? Or do you have like, do you like to get something done in a month, or just you see how it goes? Like how do you structure your time?
Well, I move through the world pretty quickly. I'm a fast mover. But this is sort of something I'm constantly thinking about. And as photographers, we deal with these tiny increments of time, 1/25th of a second, 500th of a second, to talk about like existential time. Like, why are we here? What's our purpose? What's beauty? What's color? Why are we alive? How do we live more? How do we feel more? So I typically, the way it works, it's sort of, it made its own schedule. I didn't set out with this thesis, this idea, but I love to work in books. So it seems, Stephen, that about every 4 years, sometimes 3 years, but every 4 years, there's enough of a body of work. And that's working constantly. I mean, obviously, I'm doing other things as well. I'm a mother, I'm, friend, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, the business side of art is is a real thing. I answer emails all day long, it seems. And I'm sometimes I think, oh, if only I could spend all the time actually making pictures or writing. But having the business side of things run smoothly is also, a part of being an artist, isn't it? So it does seem about every 4 years, there's enough of a collection of work, which is typically, in my books, is typically around 70 to 80 images, and maybe 30 vignettes, written work that come together as a book. But I've taken thousands for those 70 or 80 images, thousands and thousands. So, the odds are quite slim when it makes it into an exhibition or a book. It means it's really proven the test of time for me. I'll often like make work, and I think some people have this thing I've noticed, they make work and they hate it immediately and then it grows on them. I'm like the opposite. I'm an optimist. So I make work and I love it. And I love it for the next 5 days. And then I was like, maybe it's not as good, actually. So it's the other way around. How about you? How do you work?
It's, I'm currently shooting, these moving freight trains. So I
Yeah.
have like this window of time that I have to get up, and I leave with my instant coffee, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and a camera case in my tripod. And I get out to a location that I have like 2 hours to shoot. And about of those 2 hours, I would say 99 minutes of waiting. And then um my muse will show up, and I am, hopeful, and then, get back and check the technical and sit on it for a little while, and then I'll do like a crappy 8x10 print
Yeah.
and kind of have that hanging around, and I show it to some colleagues and, possibly my gallerist, and then if it goes from there, I make it 8x20 into a portfolio case, and then it's kind of living with the body of work. And then it's like sitting there and seeing if that's going to go any further. And then like, you know what? I think actually I do want to get this into the next exhibition, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's the time thing. I think it almost comes back to when I model it on when I shot film. There was this lag time. I try not to sort of, I always download my images digitally right after the shoot and go through an initial, but then I try and leave it a few days, and then leave it a week, and then leave it a month. And, it's very rare that I'll sort of, and I definitely don't post anything right away. I kind of like to sit on it to see, is it speaking, because the storytelling part of it is the most important part of it for me. So it needs a bit of time, doesn't it?
I had an awakening about that, where a curator asked me to go back and look at a body of work that I had done
Yeah.
10 years before, and asked to go find some images that hadn't been presented in the past. And it was really interesting to go back and realize that there was some stuff that I had just like overshot for whatever reasons, and I was really happy. So I think that it's really important to do that periodically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I firmly believe, this is sort of part of my teaching method, that everything is connected. And even though projects may seem completely different and you've moved from one to another, one of my greatest joys in life is finding the threads and connecting. Well, actually, that project about the river is not so different than this project about cakes, my daughter. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is. I think in photography, we're quite often sort of can be categorized by our subject matter, whereas I feel really sort of free from that because it's all just metaphor and symbol, you know.
So when you're shooting, it's funny you talked about the cake and everything. It's one of the things I want to talk to you. There's a lot of food in your photography.
I love
Yeah.
food.
Yeah,
Well, you know,
where
it's an access point, right? It's like the same as flowers. Like, I those photographs of blue violet from my last book, you know, I use flowers as a way to talk about the senses. I mean, thinking about it, you know, it's a metaphor. It's, you know, ephemeral beauty. If that's not about life, I don't know what is. I mean, it's much more about humans living and dying. So flowers were this access point into that, and how we want to live. And you know, thinking about, you know, flowers are edible, flowers have a smell, flowers, you know, have sound. I mean, I thought I would have very little to write about flowers and sound, and I actually had loads to say about it. So it taps into the senses, and food is the same thing. You know, we have deep associations around food, around cake. Everyone has a cake story, which I had no idea about until I started sort of focusing on that. People would write to me all these different stories, and really deeply connected to family time, to generational relationships. It was really, you know, so really I'm just using anything I can as a way to sort of make you feel more. You know, how can I get to you? You know, using color, using light, using subject matter that you might have some attachment with.
That's so wild. So people saw the photography of the cake and they reached out to talk about their own
Absolutely.
personal family stories about the Christmas cake or birthday or the wedding, or
Yes,
it was a
the whole
trigger.
that whole project actually came about because my friend Jessie, who lives near me here, we've done she's a wonderful journalist, long form, and she grew up in a house where her mum made these crazy cakes, completely wild and extravagant, no rules, no mistakes, in and out of the freezer, you know, completely like, you know, a melted ice cream, frozen again, you know, and you know, and they were just these like just gorgeous, like falling apart cakes that had so much beauty and life and age and all these gorgeous things. And so she taught my daughter how to make the cakes. And Scout at the time was 11 or, you know, 10 or 11. And she'd always, you know, we were coming out of COVID, where I think most 10 or 11-year-olds were cooking up a storm. It was just something to do, right, in COVID. And also yielded chocolate at the end of it, something yummy to eat. And so she started cooking then and watching like British baking shows and all that fun stuff. And then with Jessie, Jessie helped her sort of break the rules. And you know, so Jessie's whole, you know, grew up in a way. It was like she showed me all the pictures of her birthday cakes, and I was like, oh my God, your life has been measured in cakes. And it was another way to sort of talk about age and time and celebration and you know, relationships between parents and vulnerability. It just tapped into so many things that I'm interested in as an artist.
That's so great.
And then since then, people have been, yeah, they write to me either on Instagram or they email me and they say, you know, I had this experience. This is what, you know, I'll always remember this about this cake. And so I sort of do, you know, I love to do research behind my work, and it also serves as content for my writing. So, you know, just as I did a deep research into flowers, about how flowers had been used in culinary arts, medicinal, you know, botany was, you know, medicine. And I did the same with then cakes. So looking at culturally how cakes, which seem so fluffy and light, I sort of opened up this door and actually found that there was this sort of kind of nefarious dark side to cakes, which as an artist I'm also interested in. Things like, you know, gender roles, you know, kind of colonization with, you know, the arrival of sugar, and that came at the backs of the slave trade. And so all of this world of something that seemed sort of quite just easy and gentle subject matter actually had a really weight and had something to say about it. And that was really interesting to me. And I actually love Stephen taking subject matter that people think is one way and saying, well, actually, look at this. This might seem like it's sort of denigrated into the realm of the feminine, but actually there's a very, very a deep well of historic information around this.
That's really interesting. I would not have, yeah, thought about that at all. And it's so true. I don't know if you listen to the Bowery Boys at all.
No.
It's it's two guys. They have a podcast just about New York, and they had a recent episode about the history of the sugar trade
Mm,
in New York and Williamsburg, and particularly in the sugar factory. Um, wow, yeah, that's a lot.
yeah.
Um, you've got 4 sold out books.
I do. Very lucky. Well, actually, Blue Violet is still in print. Monticelli, my publisher, Faden, part of Faden, they're committed to keeping it in print, which is really lovely because that's one thing I just love about books. I collect books I have for years and years and years. And, you know, a $50 book, it should stay a $50 book. I mean, I love the world of the sort of rare book, but there's something really beautiful as a photographer that it is available still as, you know, the $50 book rather than, you know, the sort of crazy prices things can get when they're sold out. You know, it's not a print, it's a book. So 3 sold out books and 1 still in print.
Okay. It's sold out, but they keep printing it.
Yeah, exactly.
You said that you're kind of like you're a book-driven artist in a sense. Like, is it that because of the narrative and the collection of the larger number of images, like, and the involvement also with the text? Like, what else draws you to bookmaking?
Well, I taught bookmaking when I was a professor at the Art Institute of Boston, and I remember when my boss gave me that job, someone had just one of the teachers had just dropped out, and he was like, "You're going to teach it," because I always worked in book form, cutting out my contact sheets, writing notes, lyrics, anything I was drawn to, over half overheard conversations on the tea, and you know, so I'd always worked in this sort of form, but I'd never actually made a book. And he was like, just never let them smell fear. So I would literally be 1 week ahead. I would be like, and this week we're doing an accordion or a Japanese stab binding. And I would have learned it the prior week. But you know, if you do anything you do with passion, I think people are interested in. And I loved books. I mean, I love books. I actually don't know a single photographer, maybe someone's out there who disagrees with me, but I think most photographers love books. I think it's like the perfect stage for our work. I also love that it gets so much more audience than just a gallery show, which I also love. That there's something about holding a book that, you know, you can put yourself in that person's world and then you come out just forever a little bit changed, a little bit different. I love that about books. And I love the ISBN number being forever. I love holding them. I love the smell of them. So I think it's really tied to photography in many ways, more so than, say, painting or sculpture. I mean, often you see books about painters. They're sort of more like an anthology or more greatest hits, whereas photo books are really linked. It's more like albums or something, music,
Interesting.
you know?
Did
Yeah.
you keep some of the early collages where you were cutting up
Oh,
and paint?
absolutely. I've got cupboards full. Yeah, yeah. No, that's one thing. And I used to, early on in my career, I would show these books alongside the work on the walls. And maybe I did that 2 or 3 times. And then I realized it wasn't a good thing because nobody was looking at the work on the wall. They were all inside. It was like open up your dirty laundry or something. They were all just wanted to see what was going on in the books and the interiority. And, it just, yeah. So I stopped. It was its own thing. But those books really have a place in the trade books that I've put out into the world. You know, there's a lot of hand lettering. There's, it gives the illusion that it's more, the writing is sort of more journal-like, even though it's not. I mean, it's very much, it's rewritten and rewritten and rewritten and edited and rewritten, 20 times before it lands in the book. But there is something about the way I use words that make it feel, because they're about everyday things. So it has that pattern maybe of a diary.
Have you ever shown those like sketches, like the cutouts and the writing? Do you ever like put those into the exhibitions or?
I haven't. I always exhibit text alongside my photographs, always. And that will take the form of maybe letterpress, so I can get the color and the type, or neon. I've worked with neon for now the handwriting to the neon maker. And so I'm always trying to find a way to make the text more visual. This last this show this past summer. I also had all the audio where I recorded. I went in during COVID, and I was part of a documentary called Eat Flowers. So I had to learn how to read my writing, which seems so simple, but I didn't realize what I was doing. I was taking a deep breath at the beginning of the written piece, and then just like reading it really fast, and then taking a breath at the end. Thank God it's over. So I actually took classes and learned how to read. And so that was really interesting. So I'm always trying to bring what the text does in the book into the exhibitions, but I've never actually just shown the pages of my diary since that very early work.
You mentioned the documentary. You had a camera crew following you and like shooting you while you were working, right?
Well, so it wasn't really a camera crew. It was one amazing woman called River Finlay, and she approached me in COVID, like early COVID, 2020, that summer when we were all like, what's happening? She had family up here. She lives in DC. She's a documentary filmmaker, and said, do you know of anyone who might be, I'm looking for a story. And I was like, oh, let me ask around. And she was like, actually, I mean you. And I was like, really? And so she came. And so it's sort of, we became friends. And she came, it was made, that documentary, 15 minutes, Eat Flowers, was made over a period of 2 or 3 years, from start to finish. And it was, whenever she came up, she would, just come hang out with me for the day, or go on a shoot with me, or, interview me. Or so it was made over a long period of time. And I actually think that's a real strength in it, that it's not a talking head video documentary. It's a real art piece in itself, and that is all to do with River, the way she shot. John Shelley also did a second camera, so when she couldn't get up here, he's really amazing with visuals, with drones. And so it was really important that it was a very visual piece, given that my work is so visual. But it isn't a traditional documentary. I didn't really know what I was getting into, and it was really, really beautiful. She made something that I'm very proud of.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think there's too many budgets out there that would allow for like 3 years of filming on one artist too often these days, unfortunately.
No, exactly. But she wasn't doing it full time. But we're really great friends, and it was a beautiful experience.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, you've got also you said that there's a solo show up at Rubber Man Gallery.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How big are I haven't seen the show yet. So how many pictures? How big?
So it varies in size. I typically do 2 or 3 sizes. There's like a wall of salon style 1620 hung, and then maybe there's like 9 or 12 of them on one wall, and then there's some really larger pieces, 30, 40, 48, 56, a couple of those XLs. So, and they're printed on paper, not metal, which I sometimes do metal as well. Printed on paper, and then mounted, and then suspended in these frames. So really quite beautiful presentation. Yeah, which is part of it too, right? So to create the whole show way it feels, we did this sort of custom charcoal gray frame that was really beautiful, hand stained.
Nice.
And that shows up until, I think we're going to move it to the end of APAD, the end of April, which will be up for APAD, which will be wonderful. Yeah.
Are you going to come down?
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just up for, I was there a couple of weeks ago for the opening of Photographiska and the Robert Mann show, and did a talk with the museum, and I'll be back again, end of April.
Awesome.
Yeah.
End of April. Oh, so you're not going to come for the fair though?
The fair is end of April this year.
Oh, it's end of April. I thought through some of it was early, but okay, end of April.
Well, normally it is. Normally it's beginning of April, but this year it's back at the Armory, and it's at the end of April. So it'll be wonderful because it's back at the Armory. I mean, I come every year to APAD. It's my favorite. And if I can get to Perry Photo, I do that, but that's more, extravagant, whatever. So it's I try and go to APAD every year to see friends, to see what's happening, just to be inspired, to see what's on the walls. Yeah.
How do you, talk to me a little bit about the art fairs in the market. Like it's inspirational, there's the community, there's the industry aspect of it and everything. What else can you absorb from being there? I mean, you're an A-level artist. You've got probably multiple dealers that are showing your work at once, right? How does that feel?
typically with you typically only one dealer shows it with, you know, one fair, you know, otherwise it sort of, you know, competes, or there's too much of your work up on the walls or something like that. So so it's just a wonderful experience to, you know, connect with everyone, to see lots of friends in the same space, to just to see what people are responding to, I think is also really, really wonderful. You know, art fairs, particularly when they're somewhere beautiful like the Armory or Paris Photo, then that's wonderful. So you get to, but I also will go to other museums, other shows, just take it as an opportunity to sort of to see lots of different things while I'm in New York. I mean, again, I live in the middle of, well, not the middle of nowhere, but you know, I don't live in a city. So it's great to just have that full experience, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'm a big supporter of the art fairs and APAD in particular. And the director's actually going to be it's going to be on at the beginning of April. So I'm looking forward to talking to her about the whole
Oh, great.
aspect of running it, because it's, you know, it's such a, you know, it's a machine, it's a beast, it's a, you know, it's so many relationships. It is such a complicated uh just aspect of our industry. And, you know, it's I find it overwhelming and intriguing at once, just, you know, from the scale of the logistics and management. So, oh, my camera just stepped out.
Yeah,
Um,
flickering in and out, but we got you. Yeah,
okay.
I know it is overwhelming, and you know, spending days there, you sort of leave like, oh, you know, just you feel, you know, exhausted from just so much visual stimulation and looking, and you know, it's kind of like Vegas where there's no clocks and there's no windows, but I really love it for a short period of time. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the we were down in Miami for Art Basel, and I think we got to, oh, I'm gonna kill my camera. The battery seems to be dying again on my balloon. Sorry, I'm gonna lose my pretty picture for a second.
No
Cheers.
problem. I'm well with that. Yeah, so while you're doing that, I can maybe I'll say that the Eat Flowers documentary is out there in the world, and it will land. It's been doing the films festival circuits for the last year, and then it will you know, it will find a streamer, and then it will just be, you know, open access. People can see it on their televisions at home, which will be really great. So it's less about having to go to a film festival to see something, you know. I bet you wished you'd tidied up your desk now, Stephen, don't you?
Can you see the mess? Oh no! At least I've got a photograph in the background. Can you see all the coffee cups?
Totally. You got busted.
Oh, totally busted.
We're all busy looking back there.
I'll just
Yeah.
right
Close
about
the
there. Um, so you're talking a little bit about the prints and the scale and the aluminum printing and everything. Do you have a favorite size or favorite kind of presentation?
You know, it varies. You know, it can vary from image to image. Like some images work, sometimes they can work at every size, and then other images, like the one that we were opened up to, with the feast table that was made this summer, you know, and I made it at late night, full moon, and that needs to be big so you can see all these like glorious details, and the dripping peach, and the, you know, the smushed strawberries. You know, seeing that small like on your iPhone or Instagram post is like, it's rubbish, you know, it's no good at all. But seeing it big, 30, 40, 48, 54, it's like, wow. So it really depends on what the image is, you know, depends on the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have a printer that you work with, or do you try to get that done in-house?
No, so what I do, I have a wonderful printer that I've worked with for almost 15 years, and he prints down in North Carolina. We've never actually met in person, which is, I'm realizing is crazy as I'm saying this. But he does all my prints on paper. And then a company called Image Wizards, or they now called Vivid Metal Prints, so they changed their name, in North Carolina too. They do my metal prints, and they do an extraordinary job. So, you know, it varies from show to show. Certain galleries really love the work on metal. Others prefer paper. So it also depends on the home, the client, all of that stuff, you know. So both work.
When you've got the image, how do you handle with the different galleries? Do you like tell them I've got this new image, and then do people say I want print number one or I want it at this size? Like how do you handle the requests?
Because I'm not some certain photographers, like Julie Blackman, for example, wonderful photographer, she releases images and it becomes like Julie's released an image. I don't really do it that way. I focus on more when the book's coming out and sort of release, obviously the images are just released sort of ad hoc up until that point. I might save a few back. For when, like, for example, I have a new book that I'm on a deadline. Hi, Jeanette, the designer for my new book is here listening, I think, today. So I'll keep, I don't want to be showing all that work right now on social media. I'll wait until it's it's available or the book is coming out. So I'm not just like repeating myself. So what was your question? I lost my train of thought, Stephen. Sorry.
Oh, it was about how
I
to
know.
manage all the different galleries and the demand and the release and how you structure that.
Yeah, so it typically works by show for me. So I'll have a show and then I have a Google Doc situation where how many are left at a certain price and what that availability is, and all the galleries, it's a view only, can log in and see that. And so typically the work is not given a number until it's sold.
That was what another gallery said to me recently, which I thought was a really great solution, is that they'll get the print and but where it falls in the edition will be based on when it's sold. And then there's either like it's signed, but like a certificate of it authenticity, or they'll fill in it's 4 out of 7 or 7 out of 7 based on and I think that that's a really economical, smart, and just correct way to handle
otherwise you're shipping. It's also just so bad for the environment to be shipping things back and forth, and if it's sold from that gallery at number 4 and then but it needs to go to Zurich, and so it just is more, it's just better for everyone. It's better for the environment, better for the collector, better for that, and also it just stops things when they move around a lot, start getting dinked, start looking, things have to be like really chef's kiss when it goes out. So that's a way, I think, that just to control all of that. And then if it's a show print, it just can be ripped up.
Yeah, we've definitely had a few that have their life cycle, it's like they get down to the point where it's like a display only, and like only certain certain institutions can have these prints, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Makes more sense that way, to do it that way.
Yeah. Let me see. We talked a lot. I feel like we covered everything that I wanted to talk about. There might be. Is Jeanette your book designer?
Yeah.
There is a question. I normally don't take questions, but how your photography is transformed from your earlier days and the early photojournalism. Like when and what was the transition?
No, I was thinking about this the other day, actually. We're thinking about some of my earlier work. And so I used to, it was only when I came to Maine when I was about 26, I think I was 25, 26. And I started telling my own story of just this like small life that I was living, and using the camera as a way to do that. And so for me, that was a sort of turning point and a switch from that earlier work, and it made a lot of sense for me, because it was a way of really focusing, calming down, and less of it being sort of like target practice running around. I was like, I learned how to sort of really make a picture, and I mean physically make a picture, construct a picture, spend all day, getting like figuring out, well, what's the right light, rather than being reliant on anyone else. I would just like be in my own world. And that, to me, that practice, which I did through my MFA at Maine Media in the early aughts, so 2000 I joined and graduated in 2002. That practice really has stayed with me to the way I work today. and now I am, I do quite a lot of editorial work. I do, last year I shot 3 or 4 or 5 jobs for the New York Times. All of that practice has of seeing the light, of searching for the right way to tell that story. All of that stuff that I use in my fine art work is then relayed into assignment work and commercial work. Editorial work rather. I don't really do too much commercial work anymore. I used to, but now it's just a matter of finding the time for everything.
So yeah, does anyone call you saying that they want to get like a family portrait that is like in your aesthetic, or?
Yeah, occasionally, and I'll do that for galleries, or not galleries, sorry, museums, or rather than donate a print, I'll donate my time, depending, and someone will bid on have me come along and make their portrait. Although I always try and make it be that so it's in my style, so it feels a little bit different. But yeah, I do that. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like I just love making pictures. I love photography. I feel like you have to be in it a lifetime to do anything more than scratch the surface. So any day that I have a camera in my hand is a good day, so whatever I'm doing, I really, I just love, I'm always thinking, what I love about commercial editorial work, or working, on assignment for the Times, you get there. And there's none of the luxury that I have in my fine art work, where I'm alone. I can get up at 4 a.m. and choose to go. It's like, we want you to come at 12 and you've got 2 hours. And, I'm sweating bullets trying to well, how can I get the picture? How can I, and it sort of keeps me on my toes. And I like the sort of the restraints around it. I like the pressure of time. It's really good. It's sort of it's like going for a run or something, it's good for the soul to not have all the things you need, to have to sort of think, and I come back, typically I'm exhausted from those shoots, just from it's hard making pictures. Art making is hard. I've always said that. One of the t-shirt art is hard, because thinking, trying to constantly, you're having a conversation with you, but you're also paying attention to what the light's doing, to what the weather's doing, to, will that background be distracting? So there's there's a multi-channel thing happening at the same time, which I respond to.
It's really interesting. It's true.
Yeah.
Like how it challenges you when you get these things taken
Right.
away from you, because you still have to deliver. It's like you can't call Kathy and say, well, I was kind of sleepy.
Totally. We don't print excuses, and that's just a great way to go forward, of just I've got to get the picture.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with fine art. It's the same, I mean, the boundaries between different genres, whether it's documentary, fine art, still life, it doesn't matter. It's about, is it a good picture? Does it make you feel something? And that's the part that I really just deeply love. I love making pictures. I mean, I've been doing this, 20, 30 years now, and I still love it. Just yesterday I made a picture that I couldn't believe. I was in a critique group and it brought me to tears. And that photography can do that. Thinking of photography as being this crystal ball, of being this oracle, of being a Ouija board, of telling you more about yourself than you could ever know, that keeps me so interested.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So nice.
But it's the way, it's the same for everyone. All photography does is give. It opens up so many doors that we can, go in and just go out there with your camera, meet someone, and end up at their house making pictures of it. I mean, it's an extraordinary machine that lets you into people's lives. It's a real privilege being a photographer.
That is so wild, because I just think about photography and I'm just taking. I'm just like, mine, mine, mine.
Stephen, that's not good. I mean, but that's why, I mean, I'm deeply connected to beauty and making beautiful pictures, even if it's of a very difficult subject matter. That to me is an important way of being in the world. Like, for me, photography, I want to make something beautiful that somehow reminds people that the world is not without hope,
That's really
So,
wonderful.
yeah. I mean,
Oh.
beauty is it's a drive, absolutely. Color, beauty, trying to make people fall in love, trying to find this sort of common language. We might not agree on politics, we might not agree on lots of things, but there's often a common ground with nature, with beauty, that is something I'm really interested in. And that was a beautiful thing. I did this during COVID in the late 2020, when the clocks went back. It was the election, the clocks went back, and it was COVID. So it was like this trifactor of contention of people, it was just a tough time in all over the country, but particularly it felt in Maine, where I live, and I wasn't going anywhere. It was 2020, we were in lockdown. So I started projecting on a side of a building, and 50 foot by 30 foot. And every night, I'm so lo-fi, like you bought this Epson projector from B&H, sent it, and I would be in one other building opposite and project on this white wall, massive white wall. And every night I would go down there. The sun would set at 4 o'clock and then 3:53, and I would be there and I would press go. And that day I would have queued up a different set of images on a loop, and they would play for 2 hours. And I was only supposed to do it for a couple of days. And the response was so wonderful. I ended up doing it for 3 months, every single night. Every single night I went down there, press play, and every single night I went back, because I didn't know you could do it remotely, and press stop. And it became this sort of destination. Like people would actually, I thought I was just trying to surprise people and bring a bit of joy, this hot pink flowers on this wall in in November, when the clocks have gone back, this time period, and just bringing joy, light, color to people. And then it became this destination where people would, literally just come and see what the show was that night. And for me, that was sort of an emotional highlight of my career so far. There's been others, but that was really profound. And I would get notes from people saying, this one woman, Andrea, she would come after working the shift at the at Penn Bay Hospital, and it was a time of full PPE protection gear, and just this terrible time in our history where people were dying of COVID left, right, and center. And she was a frontline worker, and she would come and sit in a car and cry just at these pictures of flowers that were being projected. And it was really profound. And that forever changed me, and made me speak about beauty and a search for beauty, that it can heal, that it can mend us, and, that it can bring people together. I saw it with my own eyes, people like bonding over this experience when they least expect it. I think especially to like find it on the street as opposed to going to a museum. Not everyone goes to museums. We couldn't go to a museum at that time, but people don't, it's only a small percentage of the population that goes to museums. So to make something for just on the street that would like accost you, it was, I'm still searching for another massive one. Now there's a hotel in between that area, so I can't do it anymore. It's much harder than you think to find somewhere to project onto, but that was a real highlight for me 4 years ago.
That's a wonderful story. I don't think I saw that or know about it. Do you have any of the installation photos of the people in the projection?
Yeah, on my website I had someone come in and do a time lapse, and so there's just the cars going by. I mean, it doesn't do it. It's pretty good, the time lapse. So on my website under installations, there's a number of different things that I have that I've done in terms of like making the work feel more experiential. Yeah.
So you're searching now for a giant white wall in Maine? Is that the issue? I know where we can get the projector. I know a couple of walls or billboards in Times Square that would love to have you.
Yeah. Do you? Oh, great. I love that. I mean, I would love to do a billboard or numerous billboards. But it is wonderful to do something in your hometown. It was really great to do that. I was really it's actually much harder than you think. You think there's white walls everywhere, but there's actually not, that have another building across the way that's inside that you can plug in electric. It's actually much harder than it seems. But anytime anyone has, I mean, I'd love. We did do it. I did it again down in Arkansas. I went down to the university there. I was asked, and we did it on the football field, and that was amazing. What do you call those big? It was the first time the art department and the sports department had ever collaborated. So we could my pictures onto, what do you call those big, like, football things, like with the scoreboard and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
what's the, I don't know what the
Something
technical term
Tron,
is for
yeah,
the
I don't know either.
Teletron. Yeah, something Tron.
Yeah, it was so good. And we all sat on the grass in this lovely warm evening and just, watched it. It was really, and hopefully they'll do it again. And, for the students there, that, it becomes something that they can use when they're not playing football.
I've wanted drive-ins to do like, slideshows and
Yeah.
short films at the beginning, like when people are waiting
Yeah.
to get in. I collaborated with one artist that did a drive-in movie theater made out of cars that he reclaimed out of a junkyard
Oh,
and then
nice.
brought them to the science museum and then put like couches inside of the cars and charged admission. And then he had a slideshow of the artwork and then did a actual film screening afterwards. Um,
I
but
love
yeah,
that.
it was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, so I need to keep an eye out for a giant wall for you.
Okay, yes, giant wall or just somewhere to project. Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for a new experience like that.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So say this has been amazing. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I feel like we got, we covered so much already, and I feel like we could keep going forever, and I don't want to hold you
No.
up too much.
No, anything at all. No, I feel I'm really grateful to be on. And I was just talking earlier, but before we started with the B&H career, like I did the event space, I think maybe 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And so it's really lovely to be back here. And yeah, anyone who wants to, follow me on my Instagram is probably the most, it's Cig Harvey, most the way I sort of get out there about workshops, or I'm doing a little webinar in April. But yeah, just follow me to find out more. It's been really nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you. And so the show is up at Robert Mann, you think, until the end of through APAD, and then the museum shows up till
May, and then it will move to Tallinn in Estonia. So I'm going to go there, and that sounds amazing. I've never been to Estonia, but I'm thrilled to do it. So I'll be going there next. And then the book, which I TBD with the title, it's all pretty much done. We're in the packaging stage, and that will be out at the end of this year, beginning of next year, with Fada Monicelli.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. The work is amazing. Thank you, Sig, so much for the insight and the stories. It's been wonderful chatting with you, and I'll hopefully see you at APAD.
Yes, definitely. Let's make a plan.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I will be back in a couple of weeks, and hope to see you all soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone. Enjoy your Wednesday. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.